Okay, fingerboards, another thing that happens here. Every week I do however many boards we're doing, and we're working on this instrument TC1527. So I look on my little database printout, and it tells me what the wood is. It says it's a maple, it's a tenor, it's a classic. So I look in my fingerboard drawer, and I pull myself out a maple fingerboard. And then on the back of it, I'm going to mark the serial number, TC1527. I'm also going to mark on here what the binding is to be, and it says it here, walnut binding. And the inlay, no inlay from me, normally would do dots on an instrument, but this one is going out for the special leaf inlay. So I put no here, and I also write no on the front here, so when I'm looking at the front I don't drill it by mistake, which I have been known to do. Okay, so there's my basic fingerboard blank. First thing I'm going to do to it is I'm going to cut the angles, the tapers for the particular instrument. So up here I've got a whole bunch of different templates. We want the 4-string first taper, and we want the 4-string classic. This one is going to be bound. Different instruments have different shapes. So come over here to the table saw again, and I'll take this tapering jig, first thing is 4-string instrument, the first taper, jig side. What I'm doing now is I'm just lining this edge up with the edge of the jig, which will correspond exactly to where the blade will cut. I'll lock this in place. Take my fingerboard. You notice one side has some marks on it. That side has been flattened off, joined off, and is our square reference edge. So that edge goes against the jig there. And the other thing I'll check is that I've got my wide nut end. You know how the frets get tighter and tighter together towards the body. I'll make sure that's up the end here, which is the thin end. Clamp that down. Make that cut. I'll check along the edge, make sure the wood didn't chip out. Then we'll take our final taper. This puts the other side on there as well. And now I'm going to line up the top, which is where the nut will be, with this part of the fixture right here. And again, I'm just using my fingers to make sure that aligns perfectly to the edge of the jig. And now I'm going to take the side I just cut and place that against the jig, and I'm going to cut off our reference edge. Now you'll notice the frets are down. I'm lining up that slot at the top there, which is where the nut's going to be.
So you kind of referred to this, but if you'd stop right there for just a second, I just want to make the point that this whole tapering thing is really interesting, I guess, from a math perspective. But when you cut the first taper, where you put it on the tapering jig doesn't really matter, because it's only one side that's getting angled. And it also doesn't matter how wide that rough fretboard is.
Right.
When you do the second side, what really matters, I mean, everything matters, but you've got to get, as you pointed out, the nut in the right place. Otherwise, the fretboard won't be the right width.
Exactly.
It'll be the right taper, but not the right width.
And I often will make adjustments on that, and I'll sometimes have to shim it out because our traditional instruments that aren't bound need a much wider fingerboard, and often the wood we get is barely wide enough, so sometimes I've got to be a bit clever with that jig. So now we have our cut, tapered fingerboard, and we are ready to, if we were going to do the regular dot inlay, I would use one of my punch inlays that says TC, Tenor Classic, has a little locating strip there. And this is also a chance for me to check, which happens again later, that all my frets are in the right place. As you can see, they are. You see the holes in the top here? Well, I take a punch and I just mark all those, and then I can drill those on my drill press with the correct sized drill bits. We work from 6mm all the way down to 2mm. But we're not doing that on this instrument because it says no. But what we are going to do is we're going to do the binding. So I'll look on the back, and I wrote down walnut. So I got to my binding store, pick a piece of walnut, my clamps, my glue. Okay, we're ready to bind. Are you in a good spot there, Hannah?
I think so.
One piece of binding, apart from the baritones, will do both sides of an instrument. Take again the white glue, put exactly the right amount on each side. And again I'm using my finger. If you've seen the section on doing the TBSs, using your finger is really good. Not only does it spread it nicely, but you also feel if there's any nasty bits of dust or anything in there, which you really don't want in this sort of gluing operation. We'll go that side. This will go that side. Just making sure I've got good coverage everywhere, but not too much because it'll just squeeze out everywhere. Now I'm doing this back-handed because I fell on my thumb skiing the other day and I can't use my left hand for squeezing these clamps together. What I'm making sure that happens here though is I'm making sure that there is binding proud of this surface. The finish side with the frets in is down now. That's going to get sanded off in radius, so I'm not so worried about that, but I really need to have this binding proud of this surface so I can flatten this off, and that will become the surface that gets glued down onto the neck, so that's a really critical piece of the whole thing. These clamps are actually pretty tight, they really squeeze in nice and hard, so this is giving good even pressure. And I'm just pushing down on the binding and on the fingerboard onto my flat piece of marble there until I'm all the way down, so I can get two more on there. I don't like doing it wrong-handed though, it's kind of weird. Okay, that is now nicely glued on. I'll get rid of anything that's squeeged out the top. And then I take this little tool, this is an important part. I'm now cleaning the glue out of the slots. Do you see when I work to the end there how the glue bubbles up like that? You probably can see. If I left that glue in there, there would be some colourful language up at the main shop where Gordon or Aaron tried to put frets in the slots. So you've got to make sure you get all that glue out. So I'm just working down both sides. And don't bother with the nut because that gets sanded off. And I think as yet I've only forgotten to do this once, and I fortunately remembered that I'd forgotten to do it before it went up to the main shop, because they really wouldn't know. Like Gordon said earlier, they'll pull things out and they'll go to work on them, and so I've got to make sure it's all perfect from this end. Okay, so that's cleaned all the slots out. That can now set here, and that'll take, I usually try to leave those for a couple of hours because I really want that glue to be nicely set up before I start working on it. Just cleaning the excess off my flatbed there, and that's ready for the next one. The next thing we'll do is some sanding work and finish up that fingerboard. Okay.